Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Jannavallabha Girivardhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Gopi Jannavallabha Girivardhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Banachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhams Parivrajak Acharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai.
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 Son, founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Naam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai.
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 Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
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 Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai.
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 Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Yamuna Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Shamaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Prem Anande.
Hari Hari.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Shami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're now in the first canto and the first chapter, and this is the fourth verse. I'll chant it, then you can chant. Naimishe nimishakshetre rishaya shaunakadaya satram svargaya lokaya sahasra samamasata. Naimishe nimishakshetre rishaya shaunakadaya satrang svargaya lokaya sahasra samamasata. Naimishe nimishakshetre rishaya shaunakadaya satrang svargaya lokaya sahasra samamasata. Please chant.
Hare Krishna. Nimishe nimishakshetre ऋषयः शौनकादयः सत्रं स्वर्गाय लोकाय सहस्रसमम् आसत.
Somebody else, please.
Naimishe Nimisha Shetre Vishaya Shonakadaya Satram Svargaya Lokaya Sahasra Samam Astata.
Thank you.
नैमिषे निमिषक्षेत्रे ऋषया शौनकादया शत्रं स्वर्गाय लोकाय सहस्रसमम् आशता.
निमिषे क्षेत्रे ऋषय शौनकादाय सत्यस्वर्गाय लोकाय सहस्रसममासतः.
Namaste Namasa Shetra Rasyaha Sanakadaya Satram Svargaya Lokaya Sahasra Samam Asata.
Hare Krishna. नैमिषे निमेषा क्षेत्रे रसाया सोनकादाय सत्र स्वर्गाय लोकाय सहस्र समासता. हरे कृष्ण.
Thank you.
नैमिषे निमिषा क्षेत्रे ऋषाय सौनकादय सत्रं स्वर्गाय लोकाय सहस्रसममासत.
Naimishe, in the forest known as Naimisharanya, Animikshetre, the spot which is especially a favorite of Vishnu, who does not close his eyelids. Vrishaya, sages. Shaunaka Adaya, headed by the sage Shaunaka. Satram, sacrifice. Svargaya, the Lord who is glorified in heaven. Lokaya, and for the devotees who are always in touch with the Lord. Sahasra, 1,000. Samam, years. Asata, performed. Of note here, you have Shaunaka Adaya. Shaunaka Adya. Adya means at the beginning or the head or etc. Just like we have Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar. And then what is it?
Srivasa.
श्रीवासादि.
Yeah, Srivas Adi. So the Srivas and all headed by all the devotees headed by Srivas or etc. All the other devotees. Yes. Another interesting thing is Svargaya. the Lord who is glorified in heaven. Because the business of the demigods, and the reason they're demigods, is because they know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then therefore, even though they sometimes forget, he should be glorified. Translation. Once, in a holy place, in the forest of Naimisharanya, great sages, headed by the sage Shaunaka, assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. You go to the purport. Thank you. The prelude of the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken in the previous 3 shlokas. Now, the main topic of this great literature is being presented. Srimad Bhagavatam, after its first recitation by Srila Shukadev Goswami, was repeated for the second time at Naimisharanya. In the Vayaviya Tantra, it is said that Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, contemplated a great wheel which could enclose the universe. The hub of this great circle was fixed at a particular place known as Naimisharanya. Similarly, there's another reference to the forest of Naimisharanya in the Baraha Purana, where it is stated that by performance of sacrifice at this place, the strength of demoniac people is curtailed. Thus, Brahmanas prefer Naimisharanya for such sacrificial performances. The devotees of Lord Vishnu offer all kinds of sacrifices for his pleasure. The devotees are always attached to the service of the Lord, whereas fallen souls are attached to the pleasures of material existence. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that anything performed in the material world for any reason other than for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu causes further bondage for the performer. It is enjoined, therefore, that all acts must be performed sacrificially for the satisfaction of Vishnu and his devotees. This will bring everyone peace and prosperity. The great sages are always anxious to do good to the people in general. And as such, the sages, headed by Shaunaka and others, assembled at this holy place of Naimisharanya with a program of performing a great and continuous chain of sacrificial ceremonies. Forgetful men do not know the right path for peace and prosperity. However, the sages know it well. And therefore, for the good of all men, they are always anxious to perform acts which may bring about peace in the world. They are sincere friends to all living entities, and at the risk of great personal inconvenience, they are always engaged in the service of the Lord for the good of all people. Lord Vishnu is just like a great tree, and all others, including the demigods, men, siddhas, charanas, vidyadharas, and other living entities, are like branches, twigs, and leaves of that tree. By pouring water on the root of the tree, all the parts of the tree are automatically nourished. Only those branches and leaves which are detached cannot be so satisfied. detached branches and leaves dry up gradually despite all watering attempts. Similarly, human society, when it is detached from the personality of Godhead, like detached branches and leaves, is not capable of being watered. And when attempting to do so is simply wasting his energy and resources. The modern materialistic society is detached from its relation to the Supreme Lord, and all its plans, which are made by atheistic leaders, are sure to be baffled at every step. Yet, they do not wake up to this. In this age, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord is the prescribed method for waking up. The ways and means are most scientifically presented by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and intelligent persons may also take advantage of his teachings in order to bring about real peace and prosperity. Srimad Bhagavatam is also presented for the same purpose, and this will be explained more specifically later in the text. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kata Mahyam Dadati Sha Pandantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Could we, the person who's moving the text, could we take it up so we can see the first part of the purport? First part of the purport? Yeah, thank you. So the sages are assembled here at this holy place of Naimisharanya. Maybe some of you have been there to Naimisharanya. Aranya means a forest, and Naimisha, there's different meanings of Naimisha. Here, Animisha Kshetra means Lord Vishnu, who's always vigilant, not having, like when we close our eyes, we become a little bit, we don't know what's going on, either by sleep or other reasons. But Lord Vishnu is never in that condition of ignorance. He never forgets. He never is in illusion. So, as Naimisharanya also described here about when Lord Brahma contemplated, he's the engineer of this universe. He contemplated making the whole universe, enclosing it in a wheel. The central part of the wheel was here at Naimisharanya, which is about 80 kilometers north of Lucknow. In what state is that?
Uttar Pradesh.
UP, Uttar Pradesh. And it's southeast of Mathura, on the bank of the Gomati River there. And Srila Prabhupada, when he commented on this verse, or commented on Naimisharanya many times, he said there's a train station, at least at that time, maybe it's still there, called Nimsar. It's still there on the real close to this place of Naimisharanya, where Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. This Srila Prabhupada mentions that was being presented for the second time in Naimisharanya. The first time was when? When was the first time? I'm asking.
When Sukadev Goswami spoke it?
Yes, on the bank of the bank of a river there, right? Was that?
Yamuna?
Yes. Sometimes it said Ganges, but Srila Jiva Goswami, Srila Prabhupada quotes Srila Jiva Goswami, who says it's more likely the Jamuna, or it is the Jamuna, because the Jamuna is considered can be considered a tributary of the Ganges. But then somebody may say, well, wait a minute. Didn't Shukadeva Goswami hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from his father, Vyasdev, while he was in the womb? What about that? So in another place, yeah? So that would make it the first time, right? So what happened to the Srimad Bhagavatam? Somebody did something with the Srimad Bhagavatam. So anyway, the Srila Prabhupada in another place indicates that Srila Vyasadeva gave a synopsis of the Srimad Bhagavatam to Srila Shukadev Goswami, his son, while he was in the womb, while his son was in the womb. So these are the complete tellings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first to Parikshit Maharaj for 7 days on the bank of Jamuna, and now for these sages in Naimisharanya. So Srila Prabhupada made a point several times of indicating that Naimisharanya is a real place. It's not just a mythological or a fairy tale thing that you read in a book. Just like if you travel in the North Country in the United States, you'll find these big statues of Paul Bunyan. You know who Paul Bunyan is, with his blue ox babe? And there's various places that says that this is the place of Paul Bunyan. Or if you go to the state where I was born, there's a place in the northwestern part of Indiana where they say that, the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy came after she came back from the Wizard of Oz, and they have all these things there, so those are called fairy tales or myths, stories, but even so, despite that, people try to give some credence to them by developing tourist places for people to come and collect money. So the thing is, if the place is just a imagination or fairy tale, and we've marked it on the map just because it's a place for tourists to come and so that somebody can collect money, then the information or the teachings associated with it can be adjusted, minimized, reinterpreted in many different ways. So in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, there's been quite a bit of interest in establishing real holy places. For example, I don't know if anybody knows any examples.
Radha Kund.
Yes, very good. When Lord Chaitanya went to Vrindavan, he showed where Radha Kund was. It was in a rice paddy field at that time. So many thousands of years after Lord Krishna and Srimati Radharani had been there. And not only that, but then he requested some of his main disciples, the 6 Goswamis, to go to Vrindavan and not only write books on transcendental literature establishing the importance of bhakti, but also to relocate and rediscover the holy places of Lord Krishna's pastimes there in Vrindavan, to reestablish them, and also in our more recent history, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he reestablished the actual birth site of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So help us understand, these places aren't just mythological stories, but they're real places. And somebody could say, well, wait a minute. What difference does it make, if you have Vrindavan, you call Vrindavan somewhere in Madhya Pradesh, or you have Mayapur is on the other side of the Ganges. The important thing is to remember Lord Chaitanya or to remember Krishna. Well, you could make that argument, and still it's beneficial to remember Krishna and to remember Lord Chaitanya wherever you are. But in addition to that, the holy places of Lord Krishna's pastimes, Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, they have potency in and of themselves. So going there and paying respect there gives you enormous spiritual benefit. And the same holds true at Naimisharanya. So it's a real place. It's not a fake place. It's not a made-up place. And it's pretty amazing that there were, how many sages were there at Naimisharanya?
3,000.
How many? What did you say?
I said 3,000, but I don't think that's right.
That's a good
30,000.
guess. How many?
30,000.
Some places it says 33,000. Some places it says 80,000. Lots of sages were there. And how long were they planning to stay? They say here,
1,000 years.
the sacrifice is going to go on for 1,000 years. Well, are they going to stay for the duration of the sacrifice? This was the beginning of Kali Yuga. How long is the person's life in Kali Yuga? Not that long, perhaps. So is this realistic? 1,000-year sacrifice? Think about it. This is, we talk about having a marathon of things. In the 30s, they used to have dancing marathons. Do you know about this? Where people would see how long they could dance. It was a craze, and people would dance for 3 days, 4 days, a week, but then that was over. Or sometimes, we'll people run a marathon, and they'll run a marathon for how many miles is it, Dronacharya Prabhu?
26.
26 miles. That's a marathon. Well, here we have a marathon of hearing spiritual activity, hearing about Krishna, that's going to be going on for 1,000 years. That means these sages, that's the plan. Some of them may drop out, I don't know. These sages were very, very serious about becoming Krishna conscious. And not only that, but in their process of hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they knew this process was doing benefit to the world, as mentioned in the purport, and curbing down the influence of Kali Yuga, the demonic influence in this age. Specifically, they picked Naimisharanya for that purpose. So this is quite wonderful. Somebody may object and say, well, come on, how can you have a sacrifice going on that long? How can people have such, are you saying people had long lives? Well, according to Vedic literature, people used to have longer lives. In Satya Yuga, people's duration of life was said to be, you know how long? Satya Yuga? Anybody?
100,000 years.
Yeah. Treta Yuga, 10,000. Dvapara Yuga, 1,000. So this is at the juncture of Dvapara and Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga 100, but it goes down to practically, later in Kali Yuga, it's said that people in Srimad Bhagavatam that somebody who's 20 or 30 years old is considered a grand old person. So the duration of life will be reducing, mercy will be reducing, memory will be reducing, mercy, all these things, strength, bodily strength will be reducing, stature will be reducing. But anyway, so this is a little bit at odds with modern science, which posits that this current age now, people are living, having a longer lifespan. It's interesting that in there's a book written by Sadaputa Prabhu, my god brother, and he quotes all these historical sources from several thousand years ago, 2,000 years ago, historians from Rome and Greece, and also in the Bible, which indicate that in ancient times people were living on an average 900 to 1,000 years. And there was one Roman historian who said, "You may not believe this, but all of the historical authorities agree on this point, that in the past people were living, 900, 1,000 years." And it's interesting also, even among the Jewish scholars, there's several of them that say, well, after the flood, there was a flood when Noah had his ark. Probably some of you have heard of it. And after the flood, there was some allowance made for meat eating according to certain rules and regulations. And there's a group of Jewish scholars who say, well, and that's when people's life duration started to go down because of the change of diet after the flood. Anyway, so this is information that people's duration of life was longer at that time, so they could establish a sacrifice that may go for 1,000 years. And Prabhupada called it a chain of sacrifices. And what was the main part of this sacrifice? Who knows? What's the main part of the sacrifice that they're going to perform here?
Listening.
Hearing, yeah. Hear. Sometimes people say listening and hearing. Usually, Prabhupada uses the word hearing, because, and I don't know this, but I'm speculating here, but I think it's correct, and you can give me your input. When you listen for something, it doesn't mean you hear. I'm listening for the sound of a bell. Did I hear it? I don't know yet, right? But hearing means you're actually you're hearing, you're actually engaging the sense. So for 1,000 years, the plan is for the participants to sacrifice their hearing sense to hear the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in so doing, they're benefiting themselves and also benefiting the entire world. This is pretty amazing, just by hearing about Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of pouring water on the root of a tree. All the parts of the tree naturally, automatically get benefited. So oftentimes when you think of a sacrifice, you think of you'll get some paraphernalia, you'll have a havan kund, and you'll have some wood, and you'll get ghee, and there'll be all these different articles that you'll place in the fire. And certainly that's one kind of yajna, or sacrifice. It's especially important in Treta Yuga. And so when we talk about sacrifice, it could be that type of sacrifice with fire, but sacrifice has a larger, bigger meaning than that. And Srila Prabhupada explains that in the purport here, that sacrifice means any activity that's directed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. We're sacrificing our interest for his interest. And then Srila Prabhupada makes the comment that in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, any activity that is done for one's own pleasure will bind one further to material existence. We're already bound, but we get bound up more tightly, by doing things for selfish satisfaction. Does anybody know the Sanskrit for that verse that Srila Prabhupada was alluding to here? Yes, Mother Sudevi? I don't know if you're there. Okay. Go ahead. Somebody?
It's text 9 from the 3rd chapter.
Yes. You know it?
Not by heart, but I.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's 3:9. Jagyartat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartam karma kunteya mukta sangha samachara. That the translation is work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to the material world. Therefore, one should perform one's activities or duties for his satisfaction, and in this way remain unattached and free from bondage. So this idea of doing yajna, but here the yajna, even though they do a fire sacrifice early in the morning, but most of the yajna done here at Naimisharanya is going to be sacrificing the hearing process to hear about the transcendental pastimes and activities of the Lord, and that's going to go on for 1,000 years, and it puts us a little bit to shame because we have a difficult time listening for 40 minutes or 30 minutes, right? Isn't it? But so these sages were quite serious about their interest in becoming fully Krishna conscious and helping the world in this way. And Prabhupada says that the great sages are anxious to do good for all the people in general. So there was, some say 80,000, some say 33,000 sages there. And this is pretty amazing also because, sometimes in this day and age, there's big gatherings of people. In this country, they might have a big 80,000 people might attend a football game, or they may go to a rock festival in Woodstock, that many people. How long will that last? 1 or 2 days or 3 days at most, a few hours. They'll go to a revival with a Christian preacher that'll last for a couple hours, few hours. 50,000 people. But here, so many thousand people are here. The sages gathered for what purpose? To enlighten themselves and benefit the world. This is the purpose of human life, and they were really into the purpose of human life. A few other things to mention about the place Naimisharanya. I looked around on different websites about Naimisharanya, and there's a lot of different stories attached to it. What was really important here, the Srila Prabhupada quoted from Shastras, the Shastric reference in relation to Naimisharanya. There are a lot of many, you go to different holy places, and there are many stories attached to those holy places. The difficulty is one doesn't always know what is a true story or bona fide story or reliable story or not. How do you know? It's coming from the Shastras, and it's received in disciplic succession. So I was surprised that even in some of ISKCON's websites where they describe Naimisharanya, some of the important activities that happened at Naimisharanya are not even mentioned. So we're here, Shaunaka and the sages are going to hear Sutta Goswami speak Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's a Sutta Gadi. His seat is still there in Naimisharanya. And that went on for some time. But there are also very important activities that took place in Naimisharanya just prior to that as well. And perhaps you know some of those activities. Do you know? Famous activity that happened, a famous pastime that happened at Naimisharanya? Hello? You must know. Please. Sutta Goswami, he had a father. His father was named Romaharshan. Why is he named Sutta? Because there's in the Vedic system, a higher varna man it's okay for him to marry a lower varna woman, but vice versa was not recommended. They're called suttas. So Ramaharshan was a sutta because his father was a Kshatriya and his mom was a Brahmin. But that did not bar him from being highly placed. In fact, he was elected to be on the to speak to many of these same sages and recite the Puranas. And they gave him a benediction to be able to live long life because he was a follower of Vyasadeva. He had heard the Srimad Bhagavatam and other. Well, I don't know if you've heard the Srimad Bhagavatam. He had heard the Puranas from Srila Vyasadeva. So Ramaharshan was there in Naimisharanya speaking to sages prior to Sutta Goswami. And as he was speaking, Ramaharshan, Lord Balaram, Lord Krishna's brother, also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just prior to that, he had become frustrated or disturbed because he tried to mediate the conflict between the Kauravas and the Pandavas to avoid war. But he was not able to. People, especially on the Kaurava side, they were not willing to accept his mediations. So he decided to leave Dwarka and go to different holy places. So he went to holy places at that time along the bank of the Saraswati River, which at that time was flowing in the northwestern part of India, or what's now India. Then he came on this side, and he came to Naimisharanya. And when he came to Naimisharanya, there were all these Brahmins hearing Ramaharshan Sutta, who was seated on the elevated seat of Vyasasan. So when Lord Balaram entered the place, all the sages who were in the audience, many of them offered obeisances, or some of them got up and then offered obeisances and gave some praise to Lord Balaram. The only person who didn't acknowledge Lord Balaram was
Ramaharshan.
Ramaharshan. So Lord Balaram considered, ordinarily, this is described ordinarily, a person sitting on the Vyasasana doesn't have to interrupt and give special respect to any person coming. But the exception would be, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the source of everybody's, the center of respect for everyone in the universe. So for that reason, he should have gotten up and at least acknowledge and give some respect to Lord Balaram. But because he didn't do that, Lord Balaram could understand his realization and understanding of the Supreme Lord was artificial and false, external. He didn't really understand the meaning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the meaning of the Puranas, the meaning of Krishna consciousness. And for him to be instructing all these sages in spiritual life was going to create havoc. So therefore, Lord Balaram said, well, part of the reason I've come is to paritranaya shadhunam vinashaya duskritam, So it appears that this Ramaharshan has really, even though he's externally pious, internally he's duskritam. So he took a piece of kusha grass, and what did he do with the
He
grass?
killed him.
He killed him. He killed him right there. And the sages were shocked. Wow. But because the sages had given Ramaharshan the benediction of having a long life with no problems with his health and all this stuff. And Lord Balaram just walks right in and boom, finished, done. So they were a little shocked. And they said, well, we understand you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But what are we supposed to do? We gave these benedictions to Ramaharshan, and can't you do something and make it right? And so then Lord Balaram thought about that, and he said, "Oh, well, the son is like a representative of the father. So instead of he said, I could bring Ramaharshan Sutta back to life if you like. That would be no problem for me." But the sage said, no. You knew what you were doing. No. So then he said, okay, well, why don't you install Ramaharshan's son on that asan, and he will have all the powers. I'll transfer all the benedictions that you gave to Ramaharshan to his son, and his son, Sutta Goswami, Ramaharshan Sutta Goswami, is highly qualified because he was present there when Shukadev Goswami was instructing Parikshit Maharaj on the bank of Jamuna. So he actually imbibed all those instructions given by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, and because he humbly accepted them and realized them, unlike Ramaharshan, who didn't have that quality of humility, which is a symptom of someone who has actual transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge, if someone by supposed transcendental knowledge becomes proud of their position, that's a count. That's a sign that they don't really have transcendental awareness at all. Because one of the first signs of knowledge, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, amanit vamidambitvam, not proud, not looking for glory for oneself at all. And ready to give praise to others. So this is a very important thing. So this pastime of Lord Balaram in Naimisharanya, a very important thing. So there was a prelude to this Sutta Goswami speaking Srimad Bhagavatam for the sages. So the last point Srila Prabhupada made is that there's all kinds of sacrifices. So there's the narrow meaning of sacrifice, which means like fire sacrifices or something. But the more broad meaning of sacrifice is any activity meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So this class is a sacrifice. It's yajna. Another place. And any other yagyas any other yagyas that you're aware of? Anybody?
Harinam.
Yeah,
Harinam.
Yes.
Everything.
The chanting
Chanting.
Harinam Sankirtan is also yajna. That's the prime yajna for this age, the prime benediction. The prime benediction for humanity at large, Lord Chaitanya said, is Harinam Sankirtan. Also, very good. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says also there in Bhagavad Gita, you know what? Jagyanam, what is it? Jagyanam Japa Jagyosmi. Of all jagyas, I'm the chanting of the holy names, japa. So when you're doing japa chanting, that's also jagya. When you're cooking your food, your bhoga, and offering it to Krishna, that is jagya. When you're reading scriptures, that is jagya. All those things. So then I wanted to read this thing. This was at the conclusion of Vasudev getting instruction after Krishna returned the 6 sons of Devaki to her. This is Sutta Goswami, who's going to be the speaker here in Srimad Bhagavatam. he's addressing the sages of Naimisharanya. Great sages, please understand that the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna are all eternal. They're not ordinary narrations of historical incidents. Such narrations are identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Anyone, therefore, who hears such narrations of the Lord's pastimes is immediately freed from the contamination of material existence, and those who are pure devotees enjoy these narrations as nectar entering into their ears. Such narrations were spoken by Shukadev Goswami, the exalted son of Vyas, and anyone who hears them, as well as anyone who repeats them for the hearing of others, becomes Krishna conscious. Then only the Krishna conscious persons are eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Do you have any questions or comments or additions, corrections?
Devotees, they can either raise their hand or write in the chat.
Or not. Or not.
Or not.
Okay. Thank you.
One thing that I really do appreciate about you and your preaching, I appreciate many things, but one in particular with this topic of sacrifice, you've really brought to light the idea that the Sankirtan Yajna, or the chanting of the holy name, should be first and foremost in any activity that we're doing in Krishna consciousness, and how it's become a custom to do a lot of like fire sacrifices, for instance. And the word sacrifice, as you mentioned, has now kind of become synonymous with performing, having a fire. But really that's not necessary. But what is necessary is the congregational chanting of the holy name.
Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada says that, and Jiva Goswami also says, he meant this one purport. Srila Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami, the Sanskrit, I don't remember the Sanskrit, but he says, for any function to be successful, any devotional activity, there's 9 kinds of devotional activity, but for any of the 9 kinds of devotional activities to be successful in Kali Yuga, it should be preceded and followed by kirtan. Oh, preceded and followed by kirtan. So, I suspect, although Prabhupada never said it that I know of directly, but perhaps he did to others, that's not recorded. He said, that's why we're chanting like Jaya Radha Madhava in the beginning of the class. There's a kirtan. And actually, in temples, at the end of the class, usually at the end of the class, you know what happened? There was an arti with kirtan, usually. So over Zoom, we missed that part. But anyway, beginning and end with kirtan for it to be successful. Yeah. Here we have a couple of high fives up there.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you very
Krishna.
much. Thank you for your nice class. I have one question. Srila Sukdev took 7 days only to read Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, but Sut Goswami took so long. Why so? I think 1,000 years or so long. So why is it took so long, and Sukdev took only 7 days?
That's a very good question. It's, I don't know that the Srimad Bhagavatam was going to be spoken for those whole 1,000 years. We know that the Srimad Bhagavatam was going to be the highlight of the speaking, but were other things spoken at that time? Very certainly possible. Certainly possible. And, when Shukadev Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj and the other sages, they didn't stop for sleep or anything. And you know that. It was just 7 days straight. And the people who were hearing, they were even more locked in than these sages, apparently. 7 days straight, boom, no stopping. So one step back, in Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll find out later, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. That the Srimad Bhagavatam can be heard regularly or every day, not just 7 days, not just, and it can go on for 1,000 years or some part of the 1,000 years. So I don't know if it took 1,000 years to finish the Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't think it did, but does anybody know specifically?
No.
Is Mother Sudevi there?
I don't think she's not here anymore. It doesn't look like.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so that's what my answer is. I don't know that it was exclusive to the Srimad Bhagavatam that was spoken to the sages, but certainly the whole Srimad Bhagavatam was included.
Okay, maybe they Sukdev Goswami did the summary and the sages.
No, Sukadeva Goswami spoke the whole thing, 18,000 verses, and this was again the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, there's a little more that Sutta Goswami said, because he fielded the questions by the sages, which is there's 6 main questions by the sages that are going to be included in this chapter. So he gave the whole Srimad Bhagavatam also, not just, and so 18,000 verses wouldn't take 1,000 years though. You're correct, but with questions and answers and other things, I don't know.
Maybe in the Sutta Goswami took a lot of questions from the sages. Maybe that's why it took long.
Could be, although the questions that they asked are included in the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. So that's
they were doing the yajna in the beginning, and then in the afternoon they were doing the hearing.
I know, although it just says in one shloka, it says in the morning they took the sacrifice, they burned a sacrificial fire, and then they did the Srimad the Srimad Bhagavatam Katha right after that. How long that morning sacrifice went along, I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it was given large emphasis, because the main business was this talking of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam Kirtan. These are good questions. I should write these down, and we can ask somebody who has more knowledge. That would be good.
Thank you.
Well, just how long did they do this? And it was planned for 1,000 years. Did they make 1,000 years? Did they make it?
It's Kali Yuga.
Still, did they make it? The question is, yeah. You go to a seminar and you say, well, we're stopping after, and we're going to close down after the first day. I don't know. Good questions.
Thank you.
Mother Golokananda Priya.
Yeah, I was asking, it's mentioned in the purport, Srimad purport, that the sacrifice of this age is a chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. I'm wondering if the sages, were they engaging in Harinam? I know they were hearing Bhagavatam continuously, but were they engaging in chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra?
A very good question. It's a very good question. There's so many slokas in Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's one shloka in this first chapter also that says that the chanting of the holy names of Krishna are free one from the fear of death. It's here in this first chapter, so it's certainly a possibility, but I've never seen it mentioned specifically, so I can't affirm or deny it. For example, in the second canto, first chapter, etan nirvidyamananam ichtatam akato bayam yoginam ripinirnitam harer namanukirtanam. O sages, the doubtless and fearless way of success for all people, whether they're yogi, for all people interested in perfecting their yoga system. How? Hare namanukirtanam, chanting the holy names. So there are many shlokas like that. Kalir doshine de rajan astahika mahaguna kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha param brajet. That in this age of Kali, it's a terrible time. It's an age of faults. But there's one nice thing about Kali, is that if you chant the holy names, then you get free from material entanglement and go to the supreme destination. So there are all these mantras or shlokas in Srimad Bhagavatam describing the glories of chanting the holy names. So did they do that? You would think probably they did, but I can't say. I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah, but I never. Yeah, I heard that they did the fire sacrifice. You know, that's the thing they did.
Yes, they did the fire
But
sacrifice in the morning time, and then
yeah,
what else did they do? Did they? I mean, we don't hear anywhere that they didn't eat, they didn't sleep. We don't hear that. You know, like Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, they just went 7 days straight, nothing, no eating, no sleeping, just hearing. But the sages here, we don't hear that. The sages in Naimisharanya, we don't hear that they didn't eat, they don't sleep, they didn't do other activities besides. You know, we don't hear that.
and also Krishna says like all the sacrifice, like you mentioned, the japa. So I'm just thinking, I'm sure they always have beads and chanting japa.
I would tend to agree with you, but I just don't. You know, we have to. You know, I don't have any scriptural reference or reference from Srila Prabhupada that might support it. You know, there are so many things that were recorded that Srila Prabhupada said, you know, when he was on morning walks and stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff that he said that wasn't recorded. So certainly it could be there, but I don't know of any place it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure too. That's why I'm asking. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you
Sorry, I
very
couldn't
much.
help you on that one.
It's okay. Some question you just have to.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if you have a question and you know that you can't answer, then chant sincerely, and then sometimes Krishna makes the arrangement to answer the question for you in some kind of association with the devotee, or you're reading something, and you're going to a certain class, and you might get the answer from your sincere inquiry. It happens. It's happened to me many times. So when you get the answer, Mother Golokananda Priya, let me know, okay?
Yeah, if you got it, you also let me know. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mother Vatsala.
Pranam, glories to Srila Prabhupada. I have been listening, but this topic is not actually related, but you said when you read Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, a lot of answers come to you when you are going through a lot of things. A couple of my friends are going through real crisis. At that time, I don't know whether they are chanting really sincerely. I don't know what I can tell them to, because so many problems from the parent side. Also, personally, this person is going through a lot of things. How can we, as a Vaishnava or a Krishna devotee, how can we help them? My heart goes out to them, and I cannot recommend you keep chanting, but I don't know whether she believes in it completely. She comes to the temple and all, but my heart goes out to help this person. How can I help this person to read Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam? Because I don't know whether they are at the stage, whether they're going to sit down and listen to you, but we don't want them taking any bad actions. You have to protect that soul. So my heart was going out. This is happening, but I'm trying to indirectly help that person. I'm also chanting for the benefit of that person. So how can we help that person when they are going through such a tremendous problem in their life by themselves with no friends or anybody?
That's a good question, Mother Vatsala. Of course, you know, the exact circumstances for each person are going to be different, and your relationship with that person is going to be different. So it's hard to make a blanket statement. Well, a couple of observations though. One is, chanting is effective, or all kind of Krishna conscious activities are going to be effective no matter what the situation, because they're independent of a person's, they still work. They're independent, not necessarily, it's not dependent on somebody's belief or not. Just like you may believe that putting your hand in you may not believe putting your hand in the fire will burn your finger, but if you put your hand in the fire, it burns. Similarly, that's having a person having a person hear or take prasadam or listen to Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, etc., etc. It works even if the person isn't, doesn't have full faith in it. It still has its effect. So and it's a beneficial effect. And with depending on the person, everybody is different. Sometimes the person just needs somebody to be there. But as a spiritual person, that everyone, not just friends and not just these people who are going through a crisis now, but everyone in the material world, we're all going to be in such a position sooner or later, today, tomorrow, next week. And real help is not just to blow on a boil, but to help a person in their progress to get out of the situation where there's going to be always trouble. And that's to help a person go back to Godhead. It's not that we ignore their material situation and we don't give support in whichever way we can. And if we can encourage them to take some prasadam or hear about the soul in addition to that, that's great. Sometimes it's a little difficult. That's okay. It takes a sensitivity. We're not going to try to force something on them, down their throat at the time, but in a sensitive way. Sometimes that one can speak or have them hear transcendental chanting or Bhagavad Gita, etc. I don't know. So there's probably others who might have a comment on that. What do you say, Dronacharya Prabhu?
I think, of course, it varies based on the circumstance and what people are going through. A lot of times, people they just they want to know that that you care, that you care about their situation, and that you're available for them, and then based upon their level of receptivity, being receptive to in particular situation, you may find a particular part of transcendental wisdom to give them.
Yeah.
It could be a lesson from the Shastras, because the Shastras are full of circumstances where people are suffering, and they've overcome their suffering. But sometimes people aren't ready to hear that.
Yeah. The if you go to training on how to deal with grief and loss, one of the rules they tell you is don't tell people, oh, let's say somebody died, he's or she is in a better place now. Don't tell them that. Don't tell them that. They say that. Well, okay. On the other hand, the rites and the Vedas for Shrad, what do? What's in part of they read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is about the soul and its next destination, and the 8th chapter specifically of Bhagavad Gita. So how the important thing, as Dronacharya Prabhu adroitly said, was how you're going to do it, and if it's done with care and feeling and concern, not in whatever little tidbit you can give that way is helpful. But main thing is that you're concerned, really genuine concern with them and their progress, and not just on the material side, but the spiritual side as well. Then it'll be accepted, or the possibility that it'll be accepted is more.
Prabhu, even though they are highly educated, how come they cannot come to a solution, find a solution for their own problem? That really puzzles me. All kinds of
there's so many highly educated people. There's so many highly educated people in the world, and we remain in darkness because we're we don't want to accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's this material world. We came here. Why did we came here? Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata. Very intelligent people, but we came to this material world because we're say why Krishna should be always served. Why him served? I should be served. Icha dvesha samutena. I'm more important. I'm the important one, not them, not Krishna. Okay, it's getting late now. I think I appreciate all the questions, but I think we have to go.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnugada Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Everybody have a wonderful day. We will hopefully see you tonight at for Bhagavad Gita at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
you, Prabhu.
Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a great day.
Hare Krishna to everybody.